My pleasure to have you today, my friends. Imagine your child stops talking to you forever. Not because they're angry, not because they're going through some phase, but because they are profoundly scared of you. That is the silent wound every parent risks missing. It's this relational fracture where the deepest safety is just lost. And for one parent, that brutal realization started with a tiny, innocent scratch across their son's palm. Welcome to Enchanted Life Inside.
Today we are undertaking a deep dive into material that is, it's simultaneously heartbreaking and I think profoundly hopeful. We have this powerful stack of reflections here, all drawn from a story called The Scratch That Healed Me, and we're going to weave it together with the core psychological research from, developmental masters like Dr. Gordon Neufeld and Dr. Gabor Maté. The narrative, it all centers on a simple, singular event, a child coming home with a minor physical mark. But here's the paradox, the thing we really have to unpack. How can a small physical wound like that become the razor's edge, the thing that reveals the greatest failure of a parent-child relationship?
Such a critical question. Right, because your initial instinct in that moment, it might be to fix, or to judge, or to enforce the rules. But this story, this is about something far more radical. It's about this agonizing self-reflection, about confronting our own biases, and really undertaking the painful journey back to trust. So our mission today, it's not to get overwhelmed by all the dense data of developmental psychology. It's to be deeply moved by the truth of what happens when we unconsciously prioritize things like performance or authority or just the system over our child's emotional reality. We're going to unpack the exact moment trust failed, and then we're going to discover the scientific and relational principles that have to govern emotional safety so that you can walk away not just informed, but really equipped to heal those potential fractures in your own closest relationships.
And we're bridging this deeply personal story with the clinical, often piercing insights of Maté and Neufeld.
It's not just theory, is it? It's more like an operating manual for whether your child develops the security they need to tell you the hardest truths when they are really, really struggling. So, to begin this complex navigation, I'll turn to you. When we look at this convergence of personal story and clinical science, what's the ultimate goal? What are we trying to resolve for the listener today?
Well, what's so fascinating here, and I think what gives this deep dive its piercing quality, is that the physical incident, that faint scratch, it just acts as a catalyst.
A trigger.
Exactly. It forces the parent to stop focusing on the behavior and start confronting a much larger, sort of systemic relational failure. We are resolving the core relationship problem, the breakdown of the attachment system itself. For you, the takeaway has to be this. A child's silence, especially in moments of distress or conflict, is not rebellion. It's a highly rational, protective psychological strategy. It's the clearest indicator of emotional unsafety.
Unsafety, not defiance.
Precisely. So the critical question we had to debate here, as you said, is fundamental. Do we instinctively side with authority, with the school's summary, with the appearance of responsibility? Or do we prioritize believing and protecting our child's reality first? The answer to that choice, well, it governs everything that follows.
Okay, let's unpack this painful journey. Let's start with the incident itself and the immediate relational cost, because the pain point here, this moment of devastating parental failure is, I think, intensely relatable.
We have to emphasize that emotional safety is never a passive state. It's a structure we are either actively building or actively destroying through our moment-to-moment reactions, especially when a child is in distress. That first reaction for the parent is the stress test of the entire attachment history up to that point.
The story begins with this perfect, almost mundane setting. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the low autumn light is streaming into the kitchen.
Making ordinary details feel strangely significant.
Exactly. The 8-year-old son, Leo, is just eating his snack at the counter. And that's when the parents saw it. The faint red line across his son's palm. It was so minor, but immediately that physiological stress response kicks in for the parent. The description is crucial. Their stomach dropped, and they felt like a knife had sliced through my heart.
And that physical reaction, that gut punch, it confirms the high emotional investment, which is good. That's a good thing.
Right.
The problem arises when that emotional alarm gets routed through the lens of, let's call it performance parenting.
Yeah.
And that leads directly into the predictable and yet entirely avoidable parenting trap.
Exactly, the trap. And it was sprung because the parent had already received the school's summary judgment in a note. Leo had been reprimanded for physical aggression.
So the narrative was already written for them.
The narrative was written, and this is where that authority bias just immediately takes control, hijacking the parental instinct. The parent saw the system's definition of the event aggression, a disciplinary issue, before they truly saw their own child and his unique experience. As the source says, the parent did what every responsible parent does. They started pressing for detail.
The interrogation.
They essentially initiated an interrogation, prioritizing information gathering to solve the problem and manage the school's narrative rather than offering sanctuary. They led with the accusation. The teacher said you hit another student.
And this is the profound relational stumble. Because Leo, he attempts to tell his truth. He offers his simple, self-preserving reality. I only took his water bottle. He was hitting me with it. He's trying to correct the record. He's trying to explain he was defending himself.
But the parent is driven by fear, right? The fear of being judged, of having a bad kid. So they're leading with the external narrative, the teacher's story, and demanding proof, demanding that his story lines up with the school's version.
Instead of leading with unconditional belief.
Yes, instead of solidarity.
And the parent is signaling, maybe unknowingly, that the system's view of reality holds more weight than the child's own lived experience. The child is immediately put on the defensive, forced to defend himself not only against the kid who hit him, but now against this perceived alliance between his parent and the school.
And this is where the devastating silence enters the picture. This is the core of our deep dive. The narrative emphasizes the immediate climax of this conflict. Leo just stops talking. He physically retreats, growing quieter, smaller.
He's shutting down.
And the source insists this silence was not defiance. It was a profound, chilling resignation. It was the crushing emotional message sinking into his developing mind. The core pain point we talked about. You won't believe me. You'll take their side. I'll get in more trouble.
This is the trauma of the attachment wound made manifest. The child is faced with a conflict between an external system and his own truth, and he instinctively tests the boundary of the most important relationship in his life.
And it failed the test.
When the parent aligns with the external authority without first prioritizing the child's reality, the child learns the most dangerous, most life-altering lesson. Vulnerability is costly. Emotional exposure to my primary caregiver, the one person who should provide absolute sanctuary, is unsafe.
They retreat behind a psychological barrier.
Precisely. And that silence instantly becomes a formidable protective shield. It's a necessary and, from his point of view, a highly rational defensive maneuver. Maté talks about this profound relational misalignment all the time.
It's the shock of realizing that your child fears you, their own parent, more than the bully or more than the punishment. The parent in the story instantly connected this truth to Dr. Gabor Maté's work. They recalled his words, which must have just sounded like a siren in that moment. If your child is being bullied and doesn't tell you, it's not because they don't love you, it's because they don't feel safe coming to you.
Yeah.
The parent described the fundamental self-doubt this provoked. Just, my child didn't feel safe with me. That is the gut-wrenching moment.
That level of self-doubt is agonizing, but it is entirely necessary for genuine growth. When we analyze the psychological reality, Maté's observation holds true across the board. The sources confirm that, according to multiple studies, a majority of children hide emotional pain from parents.
The bullying, the anxiety.
All of it. The small failures. Because they fear being misunderstood, or worse, they fear disappointing the parent and risking the loss of love or approval.
Can we delve into the mechanics of that fear for a moment?
Yes. Children instinctively understand the power dynamic. If they disclose a failure or a painful truth, and the parent immediately responds with anxiety or with solution-seeking or with judgment, the child registers that their disclosure caused pain in the parent.
So to protect the relationship.
Which is vital for their survival. They silence themselves. Silence is then optimized as the safer choice.
So silence isn't a misbehavior to be corrected. It's a profound diagnostic tool. It's signaling a lack of emotional safety.
It is the alarm bell. The child, instinctually, is optimizing for relational survival. If telling the truth results in more disappointment, more interrogation, or the threat of more trouble, the most rational response for developing brain is to shut down that communication pathway.
Wow.
That faint scratch Leo had was not the wound itself. It just revealed the psychological wall the child had already built.
Which means the parents' past behavior, their patterns of fixing and judging, had already created the condition of unsafety long before that Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly.
And that devastating realization, it naturally leads us to the why. Why is this defensive posture, this shift to silence, so prevalent, not just in this one family, but in schools and society at large? And this brings us to the core logic of attachment and vulnerability, heavily influenced by Dr. Neufeld's work.
Yes, if we connect this failure of safety back to the larger picture, we have to start by grounding ourselves in the foundational definition of attachment. Because this drive, this is the fuel for all healthy development and engagement.
Okay, let's start there. Let's really build this foundation. What is the Neufeldian definition of attachment, and why is it so non-negotiable?
Attachment is the innate human drive defined by the pursuit and preservation of proximity. It's the most preeminent need. It can even eclipse food or rest for prolonged periods. And critically, it's not just about physical closeness, like holding a hand,
Right.
but relational closeness, the feeling of being seen, felt, and understood by the primary caregiver. This bond is biological.
Maté often discusses the neurobiology of this, doesn't he?
He does. When this bond is secure, when the child feels safe and connected, it promotes the healthy growth of the child's own opioid and dopamine circuitry. When the caregiver reliably attends to the child's needs, the brain releases these feel-good chemicals, natural opioids, that soothe pain and reinforce the connection. Love, connection, incentive, motivation. They're all chemically reinforced by secure attachment.
So a secure attachment isn't just a nice idea. It's literally building the brain's capacity for well-being, for motivation, for managing stress. The child feels a physical reward for being close.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. Separation, or even just the threat of a broken connection, registers in the brain similarly to physical pain. It's a survival mechanism. The inverse is also true. Insecure environments or high-stress situations where that primary attachment is disrupted, they impair these systems, and that leads to a profound search for relief.
And what's the greatest threat to this system? We mentioned physical separation, but you said it's broader than that.
It is the psychological experience of a broken connection, that pervasive feeling of not being seen, heard, or understood. If the primary attachment to the responsible, caring adult feels insecure, the child's instinctual drive for proximity doesn't just vanish.
It just finds a new target.
It reroutes.
Yeah.
It's compelled to find a substitute connection, regardless of the quality. And this rerouting is what leads to the devastating developmental disruption known as peer orientation.
Okay, and this is a crucial area because parents and educators often mistake this for maturation, right? We assume that when a child pulls away from adults and leans into their friends, it's a healthy sign of independence. But Neufeld defines it as a disruption, a flight.
It's fundamentally maladaptive because it's driven by insecurity, not independence. Peer orientation is defined as children taking their cues from each other as to how to act, what to do, how to talk, what to wear, what is valued, what is right, and what is wrong.
So they're looking sideways, not up.
Precisely. This shift happens because attachment to the adult world, parents, teachers, reliable caregivers, has felt too vulnerable or too insecure, just like the silence Leo adopted.
They're fleeing vulnerability. But why are peers the default landing spot? What's the draw?
Because peer connection is the path of least relational resistance. The quickest way to feel connected to others who are similarly insecure is through sameness. Conformity becomes the currency of belonging.
So you give up individuality to fit in.
You trade the deep, nurturing, vertical connection with an adult, which demands emotional exposure and vulnerability, for a shallow, unstable, and ultimately unfulfilling horizontal connection with other, immature, often highly judgmental individuals. They are not maturing. They are psychologically stuck, seeking validation from those least equipped to provide it.
This explains so much about why the school environment can be so challenging, and it loops directly back to Leo's scratch and the teacher's immediate judgment. When you have widespread peer orientation in a classroom, you start seeing these very specific, tangible consequences.
The consequences are profound, and they destroy the very structure of learning and guidance. The first one is the erosion of adult authority. If students are primarily attached to their peers, the teacher loses the natural relational power to influence, guide, and instruct.
And that power is just the student's desire to please the adult they're attached to.
Yes, without that relational bond, educators are left only with coercive control tactics, threats, detention, disciplinary labels.
Which just creates an adversarial relationship. It's a vicious cycle.
Precisely. And that lack of adult authority gives rise to the second major consequence, the rise of the alpha child. When a child does not feel safely dependent on a caring alpha adult, an adult who reliably provides, guides, and protects, some children, driven by primal instinct, will attempt to fill that power vacuum themselves.
They try to become the alpha.
They assume the dominant role. They are compelled to command attention, give orders, and resist direction from unattached adults. This is the child who is frequently labeled disruptive, aggressive, or oppositional. We often pathologize this as some inherent flaw.
It's not.
But it is often simply a child exhausting their psychological resources, trying to manage their own safety in their own world, because no adult has securely taken on that role for them.
So the root of a child's attention deficit or their constant oppositional behavior, it might not be a brain chemistry problem. It could be a relational misalignment where they feel they need to be in charge because no adult is safely in charge. They're just living in survival mode.
A critical distinction. And in the peer environment, this relational instability results in what Neuveld describes as the Lord of the Flies scenarios. Without adult presence holding the culture, peer bonds become fiercely competitive and conditional. They lead to escalating insecurity and wounding, intense tribalization, social exclusion, hidden bullying, exactly the scenario Leo was experiencing.
And in that landscape, emotional vulnerability becomes a liability.
A huge liability.
And that hidden suffering loops right back to the original conflict. Leo disclosed the bullying, the adult school system failed to protect him, and then when his own parent interrogated him, he chose silence. His defensive mechanism kicked in against a perceived unified adult front.
And that defense has a specific name in Neufield's work, which provides the final piece of the puzzle: counterwill. This is the protective instinct to resist or oppose the will of others when attachment instincts are not engaged. It's a natural, necessary brain defense against coercion by those to whom one is not attached.
Let's expand on counterwill. How can a parent recognize counterwill versus just simple naughtiness or defiance?
Counterwill is automatic. It's the brain signaling. I am not connected to you, therefore I must resist your attempt to control me. It shows up differently across ages. In a toddler, it's the immediate no to every request. In a 5-year-old, it might be dawdling or forgetting instructions they know perfectly well.
And in a teenager,
it becomes passive aggression, subtle sabotage, or flat-out, stony silence like Leo's retreat. When Leo went silent after his parent pressed him, he was instinctively protecting himself from what felt like coercion from an adult system that failed to prioritize his testimony.
So the parent's interrogation created distance, fracturing the relationship.
And counterwill activated. His silence wasn't malicious defiance. It was an automatic defense against a perceived adversary, the adult system that included his parent at that moment.
The moment the parent stopped acting as the child's sanctuary and started acting as the system's interrogator, the relationship fractured, and that silent, impenetrable wall of counterwill just went up. I have to ask you, if silence is this protective diagnostic tool, how does a parent avoid validating the retreat itself? If we know the child is using silence as a defense, how do we acknowledge their fear without reinforcing the idea that retreating is the solution?
That is the essential, difficult question. We don't validate the silence. We validate the underlying fear that causes the silence. We have to demonstrate relational safety before we demand communication. For example, instead of pressing, "Why won't you talk to me?" which just triggers more counterwill,
right,
a parent could say gently, "It looks like you feel very alone right now and maybe a little scared to tell me the truth. I'm not going anywhere. We could just sit here quietly and you don't have to talk until you feel like you can trust me again."
Wow, that just shifts the dynamic completely.
It immediately shifts the dynamic. The parent is demonstrating the caring alpha role calm, confident, present, not the demanding interrogator. They acknowledge the feeling without validating the behavioral retreat. The child is then free to choose connection when they feel safe, not when they feel coerced.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, we have identified the wound and the deep developmental logic behind it. Now we have to move to the hope. How does the parent in this story begin the immense, humbling work of mending that profound relational failure? This is where the narrative shifts from devastating reflection to actionable hope and repair. The parent made a conscious, binding promise to themselves to become the kind of parent who makes silence unnecessary. And their first action, detailed in the source, it was radical and public. It fundamentally shifted the child's relational equation.
And this shift is driven by prioritizing relational influence over disciplinary control. It requires an immediate, visible course correction that directly addresses the child's core insecurity.
The parent walked Leo to school the next day and, crucially, knelt at the classroom door. They made eye contact and they whispered the key phrase that shattered the cycle of doubt. "No matter what happens today, you can always tell me the truth. I promise I'll believe you."
The profound power of that sentence is monumental. It repairs the perceived breach of safety instantly. It dismantles the core pain point that had been running on repeat in Leo's mind. You won't believe me.
It's a direct antidote.
It is. The child's anxiety around the relationship is mitigated because the parent has publicly, irrevocably chosen the child's side, the side of truth over the side of the external system. That single action, choosing to believe the child first, begins the necessary work of reestablishing the parent as the safe, caring alpha who provides sanctuary.
The narrative then details this humbling, exhausting work of self-correction. The parent didn't use this as an opportunity to grandstand against the school. They focused entirely on their own failure. They realized their son had been suffering for days because he didn't feel he could tell them. The pain was seeing the distance they had inadvertently created.
This is the internal work that's required. We cannot heal our children's vulnerability wounds until we heal our own. The story highlights a moment of deep self-awareness, acknowledging the inheritance of silence.
Right.
The parent recognized they had been the quiet child themselves, learning early on that showing vulnerability was weakness, and they had unconsciously passed that exact crippling lesson onto their son.
So if you, listening to this, grew up in an environment where your pain was dismissed or fixed, you inherently learned that vulnerability is dangerous and you carry that pattern forward. The parent realized they were punishing their child for the very vulnerability they were unable to express themselves.
Precisely. And that recognition is what makes the necessary apology possible and meaningful. The parent apologized not for the child's behavior, but for their own reaction. I'm sorry, I should have asked more questions yesterday. I should have believed you without making you prove yourself first.
And that's not just words.
It's an act of profound vulnerability from the authority figure, which is exactly the model the child needs to see to feel safe being vulnerable in return.
The narrative then moves into the practical changes the parent implemented, shifting from solving the pain to just validating its existence. In the past, the parent might have dismissed difficult feelings with a quick, "Don't worry, it'll get better," or "just ignore them."
And those dismissal phrases, while they might be well-intentioned, they subtly communicate to the child that their current feeling is inconvenient or excessive or just needs to be changed for the parent's comfort. Validation operates differently.
The new approach involved acknowledging the pain first. For instance, when Leo was upset about a friend moving away, instead of the old fixing approach, the parent acknowledged the reality. It hurts when someone forgets something important to you, doesn't it?
The validation is the precursor to emotional safety. When a child feels truly seen and understood, their stress response quiets down, and the attachment system stabilizes. Maté often refers to this as the presence of an accepting witness.
An accepting witness, I like that.
That witness allows the child's internal storm to rage safely without demanding the child suppress it or apologize for it.
And this commitment to starting over, despite all the past failures, is captured so beautifully by that Chinese proverb the parent reflected on. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The parent couldn't change the past moments of doubt or the interrogations, but they could commit to relational presence and belief today. And here's where it gets really interesting. The breakthrough example. The specific ritual they developed around Leo's anxiety, the angry butterflies. Leo confessed he felt deeply anxious before tests. The old solution-oriented reaction would have been, just study more, or you have nothing to worry about.
Which is cognitively driven, and it completely ignores the physical manifestation of stress.
Yeah.
The anxiety is already in the body. If we try to solve a body problem with a cognitive solution, we fail.
So the new reaction, the relational one, was powerful. What does that anxiety feel like in your body? Where is it living?
They were connecting to the child's physical, felt experience. They were externalizing the internal state to make it manageable.
Exactly. Taking this overwhelming, amorphous internal state anxiety and giving it boundaries and a name. And Leo, he named it butterflies that feel angry, which is such an incredible insight into his mixed emotions of nervousness and frustration.
It's amazing.
And the parent validated it immediately, bringing that caring alpha energy to the experience. Angry butterflies are tough. They feel prickly, don't they? Let's see what we can do together to help them calm down. That validation ritual created a shared space for the feeling, making the child feel less alone with the anxiety.
The parent is essentially communicating, you are not your anxiety, but your anxiety is welcome here and we will face it together.
Yeah.
This is the anti-silence mechanism. By making space for the feeling, the child no longer needs to hide it. All that psychological energy that was used for suppression is now freed up for coping and learning.
The core realization for the parent was profound. The most profound act of love is creating space for the child's feelings to exist safely, not trying to fix the pain or shield them from it. And when that realization was applied, when the child felt fully believed and validated, the wall of silence finally cracked and genuine healing began. This journey of vulnerability, though, it doesn't just stop when Leo grows up. The pattern of choosing silence over honesty is something we all carry. When was the last time we, as adults, chose silence over honesty because we feared getting in more trouble in our own professional or personal lives? Whether it's dealing with a difficult boss, or a strained relationship, or even just the internalized pressure to appear fine, we revert to that same defensive posture. That silence is the cost of unsafety in adult society, too. I'd really encourage you to pause and reflect on that.
What stands out to you most about that moment the parent chose to believe their child first, even at the expense of external authority? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this exercise of sharing, it helps us understand each other better, and it truly helps us build a stronger, more resilient community around these deep insights.
That connection to the adult experience is vital. We are asking parents and teachers to show an immense level of emotional courage they may never have been modeled themselves. The shift from silence to dialogue requires the adult to become a reliable, safe presence, a true anchor. And that presence needs a practical framework, especially for those who feel lost in the complexity of modern parenting or teaching. The parents' actions in the story were intuitive, driven by guilt and love, but attachment theory gives us a universal, repeatable framework for healing this relational rift systematically.
Indeed. We now move from the intimate narrative back to the universal framework applicable to any adult-child relationship. The work that matters, as the source insists, is redefining our role as present parenting, focusing not on the absence of conflict or pain, but on the enduring presence of safety.
And this framework from Norfeld offers a practical toolkit for reclaiming connection and bypassing that instinctual counterwill we discussed, for moving a child away from peer orientation and back toward adult guidance.
The first foundational strategy is collecting the student, or the child. This is a deliberate, intentional act of engaging the child's attachment instincts to gain their relational attention before you attempt to instruct or direct. The purpose is to prime the attachment bond, making the student naturally receptive to the adult's influence.
That sounds almost ritualistic. How does an adult collect a child's attention without demanding it? Because demanding it just triggers counterwill.
It's subtle and non-demanding. In a classroom, it's the deliberate use of small, consistent rituals. Think about greeting students at the door, not just observing them, but intentionally seeking eye contact, using their name warmly, getting a small smile or a nod. You're trying to collect the eyes, some nods, and some smiles before they even enter the structured environment.
So you establish a personal connection before the group dynamic can take over.
Exactly, before peer orientation dominates. And if a student is shy or resistant and won't make eye contact, you don't force it. You can collect the ears instead through a warm, inviting tone, using their name before an instruction. Leo, I hope you have a great day. Let's look at the schedule. This personalized, non-demanding invitation bypasses the counterwill instinct, which yields to genuine attachment but resists all forms of pressure.
So you're making an investment in the relationship before you make a withdrawal of attention or compliance. You're saying hello to the person before you address the student or the task.
Exactly. It's an investment that pays immense dividends in attention and cooperation. The second vital instrument is assuming the caring alpha role.
And as we mentioned, the term alpha often misleads people. They think of dominance or authoritarian control, which is what led to the initial problem with Leo.
The Neufeldian caring alpha is entirely different. It's about being the one who reliably provides, guides, protects, and orients the student or child. It's a posture of quiet confidence that provides a sanctuary of safety. The adult confidently occupies this position so the child can rest in a state of healthy dependency, knowing they don't have to manage their own safety or their own world.
So that frees them up.
It frees up their psychological resources. If a child is forced into an alpha state trying to command attention or manage social dynamics, like the alpha child we discussed, they are exhausting themselves psychologically. When the adult confidently provides that sanctuary of safety, the child can finally relax, relinquish the exhausting work of self-management, and their energy is freed up for learning, creativity, and self-regulation.
That reframes so many common struggles. A disruptive child isn't fighting for power, they're fighting for safety and control because they don't trust an adult to provide it.
That is the critical distinction we must make. The child is released from the burden of need to be in charge. The third and final instrument in this framework is bridging separations.
And this takes us back to the idea that separation is psychological, not just physical. It's a threat to the attachment bond.
Correct. Bridging is the simple, powerful act of preserving the connection across any potential separation, be it time, distance, or even a behavioral issue. This helps the child's brain hold on to the teacher or the parent, reducing the relational vacuum that peers are so quick to fill.
So what does that look like in daily life?
It has to be deliberate. Before a weekend, telling a student, "I'm looking forward to seeing you after lunch," or "I'm going to miss our conversation about that book, let's pick it up tomorrow." You're proactively affirming the continuity of the relationship.
Such a small investment.
It is, but it's essential when addressing misbehavior. If a child acts out and needs a consequence, bridging prevents the child from interpreting that consequence as a permanent threat to the relationship. You address the behavior, but you reassure them of the ongoing relationship. We need to sort this out now, but I will see you tomorrow, and we will start fresh then.
So that reassurance prevents the consequence from being seen as a fundamental, attachment-threatening rejection. It transforms the interaction from a punitive separation into a corrective moment within a secure connection.
The entire framework, collecting, caring alpha, and bridging, is designed to ensure the adult, not the peer group, remains the child's primary source of emotional orientation and guidance. It turns the silent wound into a scar that teaches a deep lesson about love and safety.
This deep dive began with a small physical wound, a scratch, but it revealed a profound truth. The silent wound every parent misses is that gradual relational fracture that leads a child to choose silence over vulnerability. The ultimate question as we close this discussion is not whether you can fix the scratch, but whether you are willing to see the truth it reveals about your own relational presence and take the difficult, humbling steps toward repair. The work of present parenting is continuous, and we're committed to exploring these essential truths together. Remember to click the follow button for Enchanted Life Inside to keep up with the latest insights. I look forward to seeing you again soon, exploring more of these ordinary things that happen every day but are, well, very much worth thinking about. If this story hit you hard, share it with one parent who needs to hear. Silence isn't defiance, it's a cry for safety. Together, we heal generations. My name's Eli. E-L-I, Eli. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.